Well, I don't know why today it seems to me that it's occurred to me before, but today it seems to be up to be acknowledged that those of us who gather here and in other sanghas around the planet actually all had a commitment upon this incarnation to redream this reality. I believe that the solution for everything that looks like a planetary problem or a personal one comes with a redreaming, with an opening out of a fear-based dream and into, again, the garden. So I appreciate all of you so much because you kept our date. So let's just gather into the inner space where we are all one. Close your eyes, and as you inhale, breathe in the truth of the one I am. And as you exhale, relax into the quantum field, which is a representative of that. In the heart chakra, the opening opens into the quantum field. It's an energetic representation that we can experience there individually and then open into it together and know it exactly. We are one there. We are exactly the same. The connection, the love, the peace, the freedom, everything that we believe we need to get, we find here, and we are one. I am that. And so it is. I always feel like Wednesday's a party. Years ago, in a group that I was associated with for 10 years, named called the Emissaries of Divine Light, there was a reference made by the leader of that to a book that I think was probably written in the 50s, maybe earlier. It was called Mankind in Amnesia. It was written by an author, his last name was Velikovsky. What his premise was is that human beings, as an amnesia victim, will continue to recreate the incident or the difficult, whatever created their amnesia, the incident. The human beings collectively create the re-experiencing of their separation from God, from all that is. And so it's like, whether it's climate change or the whole thing with the food issue, the whole thing with whatever we're creating as catastrophic, is in order to get our attention so that we wake up out of where we were caught, forgetting who we really are. It's an interesting book, and it's an interesting premise. I think that it probably has a great deal of validity, because there's a way in which each one of us experiences the creation of the victim identity and all of its adaptive behaviors. There's a way in which that comes out of our experience in our early wounding. So without being trite, the solution collectively and individually is to wake the fuck up. It's time.
If not now, when?
That's right. Yeah, it's time to sit up and take notice that you are not caught. The awareness that can point to what's the problem, which in the teaching that we share is an early wounding. The awareness that can see that is who you are. If you can see something, it's not who you are. We can see both the history, because we have all of our stories about being some version of being a victim, because every wound is at the heart of it. That's it, right? And we can also see the one that's been living out of that. And what is it that's seeing it? I am that. It's the awareness. When you shine the light of awareness on anything, you're having the experience of your true nature. Because you are awareness, and there's this object, there's this identity, there's this story. So the experience of seeing anything gives you the distinction between who I am, who you are, and this object that you're seeing, which might be a story, it might be a problem, it might be what you think of as an injustice, but all of that is in the perceptual field. As we come home to awareness shining on everything, and from that place, we begin to shift our frequency, because you can't come home and become aware of the difficulty so that you see the identity as being creation, basically, an identity creation, the imposter syndrome, the script that you picked up when you walked into the acting audition. Yeah. So in seeing that, we start to have this experience, and in having this experience of ourselves as awareness, we shift our frequency. And that's the golden key to everything. Identified with the story of I'm not good enough or I don't matter, we have a frequency of fear. And that's what's been going on this planet in this dream time. and we can't add years or time to it because they don't apply in a dream, do they? If you can remember your dream from last night or from any time recently, you for sure had the experience of time being collapsed or time being different than you believe it is when you're in your what you call being awake, right? So the distortion of time happens in consciousness, in our inner reality, in our inner world during dream time, but it also occurs in this dream, in what we think of as our conscious awake reality, this 3D reality. It's a dream. That's really good news, because that being the case, we can redream it. We can come home to our true nature, and from that place, simply see what's not true. And what's not true is anything that's caught in polarity, or anything that's caught in fear, or anything that's caught that creates suffering. One of my favorite teachings from Katie is, if you're suffering, you're believing something that's not true. That was actually the thing that entered the mind for this body-mind unit when everything turned to shit in Oregon. So it's like, what we're wanting to do literally is to wake up out of the bad dream. And the way of it is so interesting, because what I find in working with and loving all of you and more, is that there seems to be a kind of allegiance and attachment to the person that you don't want to be. It's like, oh, really? Okay. So you're really insisting on that, huh? Yeah. So when we start to, I think Nisargadatta, or one of the masters, talked about, and Michael Singer talks about it too, but it's like getting back. It's like you're reclaiming and coming back to behind yourself and seeing what the deal is, right? Allow awareness to come back. And from that perspective, look at it. And in looking at it, realize that you have access to it. And if you can have access to it, you can discreate it. You can reclaim your attention from it. You can relax your mind out of believing in it, because that's what's required. It's required. We have this, I think of it as being the curse of Adam. In some translations of Genesis, it says that Adam wanted to be as God and create himself. Right? And so that's what we've done. What a shit job we've done. I mean, this is who you want to be, really? Scared, like unkind, like nervous, like challenged, like no. And that's not who we are. It's not who we are. So dropping the costume, dropping the persona, dropping the projection that came through the distortion field of an early wound, right? I mean, just to understand that that's the way it's working. Who is understanding that? We're always being given an experience of our true nature as awareness from when we point to anything. When we have a problem, it's like, if you can see the problem, who are you? Who are you? It's such a, I mean, it was such a trite thing when the non-dual teaching started to be promulgated on YouTube and everywhere. And you'd have these European teachers saying, who am I, who am I, who am I, who am I? So we all started saying, who am I, who am I, who am I? But the real question is, who the hell are you? So you are the awareness, and you've been caught unavoidably. I mean, we came in, we made a choice. We left a particular realm of probably what was easier, because it was not 3D, polarized and caught in polarity. So we made some level of consciousness, made the choice to come here and to incarnate in this body mind, and to play out the possibility of this reality returning to the garden, to heaven, to peace, to ease, to everything that, I think children are probably astounded sometimes because they hear adults talking about how they want things to be peaceful and good, and then they see people fighting, and they see if they watch anything except TikTok, they see wars on the planet. So those recently incarnated ones are like, oh dear. It's like, Houston, we got a problem. Yeah, so our waking up is a very close in. This is the good news about it. We don't have to be activists out there. We may be, but we're not going to be effective activists out there, whatever the cause is, because it's held in polarity. Where we have to do the work first is in our own identity. When our true nature then moves into the apparency of a 3D reality with issues, and we become engaged in making a difference, if you're not caught in a fear-based identity, you can be very effective. Most of the time, everything that's going on in this reality, where people are trying to be in total beautiful motivation, motivated from their heart to relieve suffering, to take care of others. You have to do it here first, and then everything you do out there will be at the frequency, not of fear, but of connection and love. And then it will make a difference. There's stuff that can happen out there, but not if you're coming from a place through the distortion field of your own woundedness, because the frequency is fear. It's a very simple equation that I make, but it points to something that we can use to determine what our work is. Now, all of you in here and on Zoom too, I've done the 6 steps to freedom process. The reason I use that is because I've looked over, the last 15 years at everything that could help people arise out of the contraction of the early wounding, the creation of a person who needs to get something or avoid something. That's kind of my little litmus test for ego. If that's the motivation, then you're caught in a fear-based identity. So the 6 steps to freedom, the next piece that we use is the awareness of what it means to come into authenticity. And I know I've done this talk with all of you, but we left authenticity when something happened early on and we concluded it meant something about us, like I don't matter or I'm not good enough. The minute that we installed that, and I do think of it as an installation, the distortion field arose so that everything that we could perceive carried the frequency of that conclusion. So what happens then is that we're magnetized into an external where we believe that we can't get what we want, and we believe that we see that it may have been our fault that mommy and daddy aren't happy. We make all kinds of conclusions because now, instead of being like this, as that little infant is, often now swaddled, beautifully tucked into peace and folded in on its angelic self, but there's still something else at work there, so we don't want to give it too much credit. But when it opens up and it gets magnetized out there, now it's going to be trying to be whatever it tends to think will make a difference for mommy and daddy. For often it's to please, sometimes it's to hide, sometimes it's to rebel. There are all kinds of adaptive behaviors. By the time we get to the place that most of us are in this Zoom room too, we've perfected those adaptive behaviors. And all of them are not on our behalf. They're all on behalf of an external reality that we feel afraid of, or that we know has power over us. So as I've often said, at that point in this dynamic, in this little kindergarten model of how the early wounding gets installed, at that point, authenticity goes out the window. You can't afford to be an expression because you're hypervigilant about the external and you're calibrating all the time. What's needed here? What can I do? How do I need to be? And that's not going to be a conscious calculation, but the child is very, very alert to energies and will pick up pretty quickly what it thinks is needed. And when it gets any results from that, that gets it installed. So if the cute little girl who sits on daddy's knee when he's had too much to drink, when that works to make him not be angry and fighting with mommy, then she's got that pattern for life. Right? That's how she can be effective in an apparent external world. So after this installation of these adaptive behaviors, we no longer can act or perform or be present in this reality on our own behalf, because we are seeing our good, or we're seeing into the external reality as being the cause of our experience, because it actually happened that way with that early wounding. Something did happen out there. I mean, we've created this incarnating experience here to be pretty compelling. Yeah. I really did get spanked. I really did get sent to my room without supper. It really happened. The conclusion about ourselves follows that, and the adaptive behavior follows that conclusion. And so we're now in a performance mode. We're now hypervigilant about the external, noticing everything. Some of us are more hypervigilant than others. We call this obsessive compulsive. Okay. We're just better at it. But we start to look out there to determine how to be. So now the out there, which is a projection through the lens of my conclusion about myself, I don't matter. We're looking out there to determine how to behave, what to do, what to say, with the underlying premise that I need something from out there to be okay. I at least need approval from out there to be okay. I at least need some acknowledgement of my value, of my worth to be okay. So now we are what I call externally referenced. And now we have that technologically, social media, the ultimate external reference.
Yeah.
Amazing. So we're actually coming to the place in this dream, because I do believe this 3D reality is a dream of separation from our true nature. We're coming to a place in this dream where what has supported it, and this is exactly the way individuals do. It's what we often call breakdown to breakthrough. But we come to this place where the planet is brought to its knees. The incredible polarity, the diversity, the polarity, the inability to connect, because what's most important is what position do you hold, not to mention what pronouns. Yeah. So everything is falling apart. It's exactly what happens with an individual, as I said, when there's a breakdown of, a crisis that brings us back to ourselves because it doesn't work out there anymore. Well, collectively, this planet is not working out there anymore. There's no way to put the sugar over shit and to make things okay, right? We can't make it look like everything's all right out there in the bad dream of fear. And that's the frequency of this collective projection. So it's so interesting, isn't it, that our job is our own work. It's our own little, it seems like a little bit, it's not a little bit, because the experience that we have when we clear here, and all of you have had times of this experience, when you clear your consciousness of that distortion field, you are in a different reality, right? Can I hear it? Amen. Yeah. Yeah, you're in a different reality because we create it through our frequency. Wow, oh, how amazing. That's the amazing grace. Yeah. So the work that we do here is to, and as it will take enough of us for the morphogenetic field of this 3D fear-based reality to shift. But when you do it in your world changes. And that's the contribution you can make. Like I said earlier, if out of that is something that you see in terms of what looks like the larger reality that you want to participate in, you'll be clean and clear on that, and it'll be effective. Because you will not be engaging with it and participating in it from a frequency of fear. Right? Last week, I talked about what felt to me like something revelatory. It didn't seem to land anywhere. The day before, on Tuesday of last week, I was watching something that was talking about AI. And it was just like a revelation that the first AI was what's described in the Garden of Eden story when we fell out of our hearts and into our minds, that it's an artificial intelligence that's held in polarity and the rational analytic. And that's the AI that's brought this condition now that we think is so dire. And we're worried about that AI and technology in the labs. We need to clean this one up first, right? So the original AI in my story, my new story, was the Garden of Eden, when we ate of the fruit of the rational analytic, the knowledge of good and evil, and that was raised high, but then it got infiltrated by fear and guilt and shame, because in doing that we had disobeyed the larger reality. We had left God. We had disobeyed God. We had left. We had removed ourselves from the heart, the quantum field, the fullness of the garden, our true nature. And I believe that whatever that, there's no time about it, but whatever that cycle has been since then, we have taken the rational analytic beyond where it is effective. There is nothing but polarization going on now. You can't hold a position on that stick without incurring the other end of the stick. I mean, we've taken it to its limits. And so now we have the fear of the artificial intelligence, when all we've been living out of all of these eons since that shift, as it says in A Course in Miracles, that tiny mad idea of not God. Since we've been caught in that, then this is the results, right? We have an untenable dynamic going on in this collective bad dream. So I'm still excited about that brilliant insight.
Where did the serpent come in the garden, and the devil?
Yeah. That I think that was just the mind starting to arise as a possibility. That was the ego starting to arise as a possibility of control and being as God.
Exactly.
You think?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
I wanted to comment. I think this conversation means more to me today. You're speaking about us and the world, and how we get fixated on this outer dimension. Because I'm reading this book now by R.J. Spina's Self-Healing. And what I'm realizing listening to your talk is that every time you say the world, I realize that's the body. That's the ego mind. That's the ego body identity. And everything that goes on in here starts to get manifested. But you keep saying, you got to do the work at home. You have to do the work at home if the world's going to be a better place. And I'm now being able to lift out of my body a bit into my essence, going up into my essence, my frequential essences. But now I'm really starting to get, every time you said the world, I realized I created a whole world right here in this ego mind body, in this body. every thought that I think, every negative thing, every time I go down, every emotion, it's all been creating a world that is the vehicle I live in. It's like so scary. And to think that if we can't even do it in our own body, and or we have to be able to do it at least with
That's
our own body before we can think about making a better world. Like, what are the repercussions of the thoughts I think in my own arms, GI tract, brain? I'm just kind of railing a little.
Yeah,
But that's what was happening in this talk for me, is now I'm realizing the world, there's this world,
right,
then there's the big world.
maybe.
Yeah, it's probably really all one. This is a little mini version, a mini me world. But I just thought
That's
wow,
great,
I
great.
haven't really realized that as much as I have today.
Right, good. Yeah, that's the place where sometimes the intersection where we will start to actually come into seeing clearly and discarding and dispelling what's not true. Sometimes that intersection is when we realize that that's what we act, because our hearts are true, our hearts, we want to make a difference. And when you realize that only doing it here, which looks like for myself, right, is the contribution I make, then you move out of that, what's been purported to be self-centeredness or narcissism. You are the world, we are the world, and it's in that understanding, because we can't mentally understand it, but we can intuit it. We have a sense of it, and it's true. It's true that when you clear anything, that's a contribution to the whole. It's true.
Wanted to make sure people on Zoom that you're welcome to raise your hand and call on you or speak, and we'll spotlight you to have a conversation with Pali or ask any questions.
My hand's raised.
Okay, Quinny, you're up.
So is it-
Quinn,
The voice.
thank you. I didn't see you there, but we've got you now.
There you are. Hi, sweetheart.
Holly, good to see you.
Yeah.
A question about the witness consciousness necessarily being awake awareness. I'm aware in my own process that, and this is pretty subtle, but that there's a way in which sometimes the sense of witness is actually is dissociation. It's like I'm not actually fully here. I'm watching myself in ways that, I might have split from my body in the past. And it can look like witnessing. It's like I'm watching the whole thing, but I'm not as connected. And of course, underneath there's fear, but it doesn't feel like fear at the time. It just feels like objective, watching. It looks a lot like witness. And I'm wondering if you can say more. I mean, I think that just to track when witness is really awake awareness. It's dissociation.
Yeah, what occurs to me, Gwen, is I don't know if would be a distinction that would be helpful or not, distinguishing between witnessing and dissociation. But what occurs to me is, what are you seeing? Because I think the witness, as the witness, I consider the witness to be the opening into awake awareness. Basically, it's the mechanism that we have, that we use on behalf of awareness. But when it's dissociation, then I believe the quality of what we see will either want to get. I don't know this because I've never had that experience. I haven't done that. But in your experience, is if the dissociation is one of wanting to get away from, or it's like a subtle consideration about what's the motivation here. I think that might make the distinction, but it might not.
Well, there's definitely fear. I mean, dissociation is a freeze, which is caused when there's no options when you're threatened, and there are no viable options. So there's a quality. It's just hard to see because it feels good. It's got opioids. It feels good the way awake awareness can feel good. You don't notice the fear, and and what I'm seeing when I'm going through doing sessions, various types of sessions is that there's a lot of, I'm noticing a lot of sensation. There isn't affect. There's no
Right.
affect.
Right. Mhm. And can you notice that in your client?
I'm working with it with clients and I'm working with it in myself.
Right. Can you notice it in yourself? That would be
Yes. Yeah, no, I only just recently, the reason I'm even bringing this up is because it was like a recent revelation to me, like, oh, that's not witness, that's me separating. It's a split. That's
Really?
like that actually is a freeze, is a dissociation.
Mhm.
And that felt liberating, like, oh, then I'll turn toward that and really see what's underneath that. But it so much resembles how I've seen like witness
Mhm.
anything. It
Mhm.
feels so similar
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
many,
Yeah. Well, the distinction that you made is the one that, but I can see that it could be a slippery slope for sure. Right. Because it could be a kind of, motivation of the wounded one.
yeah,
It could have been an early way of dealing with, and,
totally.
and that thereby available. Yeah. So I guess for you, because you're doing such deep work, for you it would be, can you witness the freeze? Can you witness the dissociation?
That's a great question.
You did do that because you reported it to me that you became aware of it. That's equivalent to witnessing.
Well, someone else shined the light for me.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm like, oh,
Whoa, yeah.
yeah, so I'm not sure that I'm there yet. Like,
Right.
it mostly just feels like, oh, I'm watching this. But I'm going to be paying a lot more attention to whether there's a cold state involved, like
Right.
whether, like there might be other hints that it's, indications that
Yeah, I'd be really interested in those distinctions as you come upon them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That is
Right.
really food to chew on.
Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, those little adaptive behavior ego guys are pretty sneaky. Yeah. Like, try this one on, huh?
I heard a great definition of God, and it was saying God, give own description. That's a good one.
It can be really daunting to make the turn to what I call true north, or being on your own behalf, because it feels so risky. We've become really good at adaptive behaviors that keep us from dealing with rejection or our experience that somebody else is judging us, which is we've gotten really good at all of the adaptive behaviors that keep us from experiencing our wounded conclusion. And when you start to come to be on your own side, it's a rocky road in a way, but it's just in the moment, just telling the truth about what do I want to experience, and to recognize that as your job. Because what we did early on was we believed that I need you out there, mommy, daddy, brother, sister, friends, to love me. I need you out there in my who are on my Twitter or my, I forget what the names of them are.
Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, that's right. We're always looking for out there for the likes or for the comment or whatever. But you've got to reach out your arms and recollect your attention particles from out there, whether it looks like your beloved other or your friends or a world where you feel like you are at risk. You got to come home. It's, and living from that place is such a sweet and connected feeling, because when your self-judgment falls away, all judgment falls away. It's quite a kind of irony that the only reason that we judge anything in the outer is because of the lens, the distorted lens of our self-judgment that was installed as a wound.
I remember Oprah Winfrey saying years ago that in her 25 years on television, every guest that she interviewed wanted to know that she was approved of or he was approved of, and they did okay. Every single one. So we all have that in us.
Until you don't.
Needing to approve.
Until you
Approved
don't.
of.
Until you don't. Right.
Until you don't.
Right. You're the world. And so as you know that, the idea that something can come from out there that you need to get or avoid is not true. Out there is just the fun of it all.
Mhm.
It's the exchange, the connection, the friends, the
Yeah,
food.
way better.
I'm listening to my body right now that is feeling quite tense and uncomfortable. And I realized, when you were talking about the planetary dissolving and I love nature programs, and I'm looking at the icebergs collapsing and I could just, the part of me that feels like I'm part of Earth Mother is in pain. I just feel like I'm feeling that. I love being in circles when we're together and we imagine Earth that we're holding and we're beaming and we love doing that. So that same part of me that really loves doing that is freaking out, actually. I'm identifying so much with Earth that it's actually hurting me. And so I would love to step away from that and still have the concern without taking it into my body.
Right, and that's one of the things we talk about that little bit of what we might call dissociation, that little bit of stepping back, and then seeing what is here to do, because that why you're pulled into it is out of our own woundedness. That's when we are magnetized into it and suffer with it. Yeah, but we're not effective there, right? The way that we can step back and see what's in front of us to do is an entirely different frequency. It's no longer the frequency of fear, of the catastrophe or this whatever. Yeah, so it's just a backing out a little bit. Thanks, Lily. How are we doing?
Let's see. Got about 10 more minutes.
Okay, whoa, somebody better talk.
Yep, we've got a hand raised. It's Linda.
Linda? I don't see people in here now except me.
Now you do.
You're looking really good. That shirt is so
Like this?
photogenic. It's very good.
This is a Target special.
Target.
My French designer. Is this Linda? All right.
Yeah, hi, Polly.
Hi, sweetie. Hi.
I just really wanted to check in. I don't really have a question. I wanted to report that I've been getting clearer and clearer and clearer how much fear has been running me. I mean, when I started coming back in October, it was like, yeah, it's, sometimes, but it's just almost becoming neon, how pervasive it is. And it's like, it's what runs the ego mind. It's the fear. That's all it is.
Oh, it is.
It's all it is. And yet now that I'm really seeing it, it's like,
when I wake up in the morning, when I wake up out of the dream, which is a happy place, the sleeping dream, into the waking dream, I just watch how the mind turns on, and it's always fear, and it's always fear that something's wrong, something needs to be fixed. And I mean, I'm sort of excited. It's like I'm not hiding from it anymore.
Right, exactly.
And I had this awareness. I've been sharing with you and early on in the group that I've been dealing with some physical challenges, and back in January, December, I was diagnosed with these blood clots. It's very strained blood clots. And I was talking with Robin about it this week, and I realized I've never asked myself, where did they come from? I've been going to the external, to the doctors, the blood tests, the blah, blah, blah. And I realized it's fear.
Right.
It's like I have taken so many steps in the last few years to really open and expand into what my heart desires. And the resistance has physically stopped the blood flow and created clotting. That's what I say. That's my story. And but it was like, I've never asked myself. I just see how I go to the outside, the external experts, and they don't know. Nobody's found any cause.
You have.
I have.
Yeah, you have, right.
I have. And yeah, so it's very good to be with you. And the other thing that's become really clear and neon to me is the importance of being on my own behalf. It's not separate. It's all part of this.
Exactly.
Seeing the fear, recognizing the fear, and coming home to being on my own behalf.
Perfect. That's
Yeah.
exactly the practice, because what we often say the body takes the hit, but very specifically, energetically, fear impacts this at every level, the cellular level, the organ level, blood, whatever. But
Yeah, exactly.
it's going to take the hit, and the frequency is received here first, and the frequency can be noticed through what we're thinking, basically. The frequency that we're emitting, the way I found that's easiest for people to get in touch with what that is, except that they feel like shit or whatever, that's a pretty good indicator, right? But the body, the mind is generating a frequency through thinking, and the body takes the hit, and then the quantum field responds to what the thought was, right?
Yeah. And literally the thinking was resistance to the expansion, resistance to flow, resistance to blood circulation. And clotting is like a perfect expression of that.
It's a perfect analogy. Yeah, because the flow state is what is our nature, and the fear state is resistance at every hand.
Exactly.
Creating boundaries, noticing how far we can go, because we're trying to protect ourselves, but we're actually throwing ourselves under the bus energetically.
So that's the other connection in what you just said for me, is fear is resistance. They're just like,
Wow.
it gets simpler.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad to hear from you. Yeah.
So if I may continue the perusal of that, seeing how much we enjoy circling and praying together, does that make a difference in the overall reality, or is it just about our individual reality, or do you think it's possible that we actually can lift Mother Earth with vibration?
Sure. I mean, there've been Lynn McTaggart is the one that's done most of the experiments, I think, but the TM people have done the the ones where they thousands gather and meditate and the crime rate goes down.
Right.
No, this is one energetic field and we access it, actually, we access it. We access it individually and collectively. And when when two or more are gathered, that's that's what in the gospel Jesus was pointing to, was the impact energetically on the field. Yeah, for sure. When we get together just for fun, that's the lightning of the fear.
Mm.
Mhm.
Fear is fun in disguise. Sort of.
Well disguised.
Very well.
I have another question.
Who's that? Is that Gwenny again?
It's Gwen again.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just aware of like an increasing sensitivity that I'm cultivating consciously toward the consciousness in plants and other animals, and consciously decentering human agency from the equation. And I'm kind of curious, there are a lot of people who have, woken, who seem to be more awake, but who they seem to be woken up from sort of individual conditioning, the biographical conditioning, but they're still fully participating in the sort of social conditioning, like they're not more awake to the ways that they create necessarily separation from the natural world. And it seem lifestyles don't change, which are directly harming the global south, and the global north. So there's a way in which I'm kind of wondering if awakening happens, if there's a social awakening, like really waking up out of social conditioning that's so insidious and so so built in, like how I see people waking up out of personal conditioning, and who may not be also awake to the impact that we're having truly on other species and aren't in connection in an animist awake, seeing the life awake. So I just wonder if you can if there are levels, or how you see the social.
Well, I do think there's the possibility of psychologically disassociating yourself from your personality, ego, fear-based thing that can happen. It's like you said, it's a depersonalization. But once you are no longer a person, all you have going is authenticity and love, because that's who you already are. So when the person falls away, when the person is no longer what's living through this body mind, but this body mind now is the vehicle for love, for awareness, for authenticity, for our what's already true about every one of us. We just look like multitudes. It's only that one of us. So I suspect that in the places where you're perceiving this, I suspect that there's been a partial psychological dropping of a being identified so strongly with being a person, but that it hasn't gone all the way through to their true nature, because who we already are is this. I am the awake awareness in which realities arise, right? That has nothing except the highest frequency of love and connection going on. So whatever that looks like to you, or whatever it means to them, I don't know. That's I think that because of what's happening planetarily and because of technology, there's so much awareness of what it means to wake up, or seems to mean to wake up. And I've told you personally many times, I had a very powerful spiritual bypass until I was nearly 70 years old. Right? So I mean, I understand that dynamic and but I think is that partial place where there's not, the last shoe just hasn't fallen. Because when it falls, you are connected, you are out of judgment, you are expressing in easy ways. Now, the question for me would be, what's the lens through which you're seeing them? Yeah.
And what is your experience then of that play with other species and plant consciousness? Like what?
Like, what do you mean, my experience?
Yeah, I mean, so from that awake awareness is there a deeper felt connection and intimacy with the larger living world?
Well, there's no separation from anything. So
Yeah.
it
How does
includes that the aliveness is everywhere. This is it. The aliveness is what is, and it includes what we call the plant world. We're the one in the garden that thought we were in the running the show because we could name everything, right? But the connection to it, the experience of it, is one there's just no separation. There's just no separation, so there are no categories. You know, I don't feel a category between all that is, like that I need to categorize it as the natural world, as the plant world, as the human world. It just doesn't arise that way for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, you know, one of the things that one of the spiritual teachers that's really active today says, and one of my teachers said, fall in love and stay there. What you can trust, if you're out of fear totally and into the love of who I am, then you can trust whatever your behavior and expressions are. Now, the behavior and expressions, if they're not in alignment with that, and that's not anybody else's, there's no way for others to perceive that. If they're not in alignment with that, then you're not awake. You're just not. It's a category error. I don't know why I love that term. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of spiritual bypass available. I certainly had my version of it.
Mhm.
Polly, can I add on to this?
And
Yes,
this,
please.
and then we'll just wrap up because we're.
Hi, Gwen. Gio,
It's
Yeah.
Gwen, he's waiting to
Hey,
you.
Gio. Hi.
like Gwen, I've had lots of passion and interest in ecology projects, social justice projects, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I understand, Polly, what you're saying, and actually I'm pretty confused about this myself. I think I joined Gwen in a certain confusion. That I do believe in the oneness of all things. Sometimes I experience that. I could be swimming or meditating and I experience everything as one. And then sometimes I notice that there are projects out there in this big thing I call one that draw my attention, that I want to be involved in. And I imagine that that's a loving gesture. I imagine I'm experiencing love when I'm going to volunteer, say on an eco project or something like that. So I kind of use the on my own behalf metaphor, like, am I drawn to this? And so there's 1,000 projects I cannot possibly resolve and problems in this world that I can't possibly attend to, which causes me grief. But I appreciate, Lily, that you said that. But also for me, I can only be drawn to a few things, right? I only have like 16 hours awake every day, and I got to eat food during some of that time. So I'm just trying to notice, what am I drawn to do?
Mhm.
And make that the best effort that I can make. I can't solve warfare and
Right.
homelessness, but I can take food to people I know are homeless.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, one of the things that happens is as the clarity is coming in you, and you're coming energetically into being on your own behalf, what we call true north. As you are doing that, then the field will bring to you the things that are going to match where you are and what you are wanting to contribute. And a very, it's very specific actually. And it's always such a, it's like it arises, and then your mind doesn't have to figure out the 1,000 things that most of which you can't do, but you'll be connected to a behavior, an activity, a contribution that matches. And I know you're moving into that space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gio.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, we're gonna be going into meditation now. If we'd like to make a contribution to Polly, that would be wonderful. And Donna, and we're going to silent meditation for 45 minutes. And we'll see you again next week.
Coming right back.
Love to